Some big updates involving the Epstein cover-up and the growing outrage over Pam Bondi, scam Bondi's either incompetence or involvement in the cover-up, and President Trump brushing this off. And by now he has heard loud and clear the growing outrage over this issue. So Dan Bonino is rumored to be threatening to quit, to resign. He's the deputy director of the FBI, second in command. If Scam Bondi is not fired or forced to resign, there are rumors Kash Patel may also do the same thing. And last night was the first of the weekend Student Action Summit put on by Turning Point USA, where despite Ben Shapiro gaslighting his audience that nobody cares about Jeffrey Epstein anymore and that it is ranked 0 on the list of important things that Americans care about, it was the topic of the night. Here is Fox News host Laura Ingraham.
How many of you are satisfied? You can clap. Satisfied with the results of the Epstein investigation? Clap.
There are 7,000 people in attendance here. This is the event that's put on by Charlie Kirk, who has President Trump's ear. Donald Trump Jr. was in attendance last night and heard this. So obviously everybody with a brain, other than the liars like Ben Shapiro who are trying to direct their audience who just stop caring about these things, are government officials being involved in a massive blackmail scheme by a foreign country. And that was just the start. It was Tucker Carlson, who, as usual, was the bravest man in the room, who said this.
Not acceptable. And I think the real answer is Jeffrey Epstein was working on behalf of intel services, probably not American. And we have every right to ask, on whose behalf was he working? How does a guy go from being a math teacher at the Dalton School in the late 70s with no college degree to having multiple airplanes, a private island, and the largest residential house in Manhattan? Where did all the money come from? And no one has ever gotten to the bottom of that because no one has ever tried. And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government.
Wait for it.
Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty. There is nothing wrong with saying that. There is nothing hateful about saying that. There's nothing anti-Semitic about saying that. There's nothing even anti-Israel about saying that. I've spent my entire life pretty much in Washington, where I knew and loved a number of people, including one very close person who worked at CIA. That has never prohibited me from saying, I think the CIA has done some horrible things, murdered a bunch of people, participated in the murder of a sitting US president. It's got a whole trail of crimes. That doesn't make me a disloyal American. It doesn't make me anti-American in any sense. I was born here. My family's been here for hundreds of years. I love this country. That's why I live here.
Of course, Tucker's absolutely correct. And while the Overton window has surprisingly moved dramatically in the last few years, making it much safer for people to question or criticize Israel or Jewish culture, or to notice certain things about their tendency for ethnocentrism or Jewish supremacy, there still is the very large and powerful machinery in place to try to shut down anybody who starts, well, noticing these things. And one of the cogs in that machine is Laura Loomer, who posted wild Tucker Carlson's on stage at Turning Point USA's Student Action Summit, attacking Israel and spewing his usual anti-Jewish rhetoric. I'm sure the Jewish TPUSA donors are going to love this, of course, trying to demonetize now Turning Point USA for questioning her favorite country. This was her reaction after getting banned from Twitter. Totally normal.
And called me crazy, but what are they doing? I want to know what people are actually going to do. My life is ruined. Does anybody understand how ruined my life is? I'm sick of it. I don't want to listen to people tell me that I'm a conspiracy theorist. They don't know what it's like to be me. My life is ruined, Alex.
The discussion about the Jeffrey Epstein cover-up continued because the elephant in the room is so huge that it would be obvious if the brand-name conservative pundits weren't bringing up these questions. And to Charlie Kirk's credit, he asked her this.
Do you think there's any intel community involvement in this?
I wouldn't be surprised one bit.
I am convinced, based on my own sources and my own reporting on this story, he wasn't one of ours.
So he wasn't American, which leads basically three options: MI6, Saudi, or Mossad.
Yep.
Which one would you choose?
I guess Mossad, given his connection to Ghislaine Maxwell.
Wow.
So what does that mean?
Well, I mean, it's possible that that's the reason everything's getting buried, that there is some treasure trove, and it's getting buried because...
How many people here believe that? Raise your hand. Okay, I'd say about half the hands think that it's being buried because of an Israeli thing.
It could be.
And now James O'Keefe is back on the case. You may recall back in 2019, 6 years ago now, he obtained this footage of an ABC News anchor caught on a hot mic admitting that the network shut down her story after she had, quote, everything connecting Epstein to all kinds of people, including Bill Clinton. And so now James says there are two possibilities. There is no more to the Epstein story, or there's a cover-up. Time for us to hear directly from the agents. Now, I don't know if this means that some agents have reached out to him or that they have had their operatives go and kind of honeypot the agents to get them on tape, which is James' MO. But this is going to be good. Ghislaine Maxwell's father, if you didn't know, Robert Maxwell, was a Mossad asset himself who, like Jeffrey, died a mysterious death in order to silence him. Epstein's ties to Israel are so deep that the former prime minister actually visited with him personally dozens of times. The kind of blackmail operations that Jeffrey Epstein was engaged in is a specialty of the Mossad and the Jewish mafia. Jared Kushner, who is married to Ivanka Trump, his father used the Jewish mafia in order to orchestrate a scheme to intimidate a witness, hoping to prevent her from testifying against him in a tax evasion scheme. The witness, by the way, was his own sister. And so in order to do this, he had his brother-in-law seduced by a prostitute and then secretly videotaped. And then the videotape was then mailed to his sister in order to intimidate her, to get her, in hopes of getting her to not testify against her own brother. The dirty little secret of organized crime is that it's not always just the Italian mafia, the La Cosa Nostra. There are other organized crime syndicates as well that work hand in hand with them, or, well, I guess, in Meyer Lansky's case, helped organize the Italian mafia. In case you didn't know, Meyer Lansky basically was the brain behind organizing the entire structure of the Italian mafia. People say that, Lucky Luciano was the guy who did it all, but he really was just the front man. It was Meyer Lansky.
Jews rock! I love Jews! Jews rock!
And in case you didn't notice, the character that Robert De Niro was playing in Casino, Sam Rothstein, was not Italian. Okay, and this film is actually fairly closely based on a true story. His character was based on the very real Jewish gangster, Frank Rosenthal, pictured here. This scene was depicted in the film almost exactly how it went down.
It provoked a stormy confrontation between Rosenthal and then Gaming Commission Chairman Harry Reid. An enraged Rosenthal accused Reid of double-crossing him after asking for favors from Rosenthal in the past. It was a confrontation that would earn Rosenthal the underworld nickname of Crazy, and it illustrated the arrogance that the Chicago mob boys displayed in what they viewed as their town, Las Vegas.
I don't believe that Donald Trump was compromised by Epstein or by the Mossad or by the Jewish mafia, even though he is on the Epstein flight logs. That's a half-truth. He was on that flight with his then-wife Marla Maples and his daughter Tiffany. And there was a former Italian mafia kingpin, I think it was either Sammy the Bull or Michael Francis, who came forward and said that they tried to bribe him. They tried to get him to participate with the Italian mafia in New York, which is very difficult to do, especially if you're in the construction business. And Donald Trump would not go along with them. Now, he didn't cross them, he didn't piss them off, because President Trump is a smart enough guy to know that, especially back in the 80s, that would be the wrong thing to do. But he didn't get into bed with them.
You can't bribe them. I know that as a kid growing up. I was in the mob. I tried to bribe them. Never worked. never worked. And it was beneficial to him. He just wouldn't do it. So I know now that's the furthest thing from his mind. What's on his mind is to straighten the country out.
And he expelled Jeffrey Epstein from his golf clubs after realizing what a complete dirtbag he was. But if you're dumb enough to trust Ben Shapiro, which obviously none of my subscribers are, and if you're so out of touch that you really have no idea what it is that's going on with Epstein, which none of my viewers are, obviously, but we all know people who are like that, then you would believe that nobody cares about Jeffrey Epstein and that it's not important at all. Right, Ben?
And on a list of American priorities by the polls, the Epstein-Maxwell case comes in pretty close to zero.
Which polls? Okay, which polls are you seeing here, sir?
Just on a list of priorities.
He's just making this up out of thin air. The polls say that nobody cares about Jeffrey Epstein, even though it's literally the top trend on the internet and it dominated the conversation at Turning Point USA's Student Action Summit yesterday and probably will this whole weekend. It's not going away, which is why Steve Bannon is calling for a special prosecutor to be appointed in order to look into the cover-up. But fear not, Americans, the Democrats are coming to the rescue. Or so says Congressman Eric Fartsmell, who posted, "You were promised the truth about Epstein. Trump buried it. House Republicans refused to take out the shovels to unearth it. That's okay. House Democrats will get to the truth." As if they didn't do everything that they could during the Biden administration to try to come up or concoct some kind of a fake connection between President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. As if James Comey, the former director of the FBI, wouldn't have made copies of those files or wouldn't have come forward and made salacious claims. He knows that there's nothing. There is absolutely nothing connecting President Trump to this nefarious activities. And the so-called client list is a misnomer. It's a blackmail list. And to even really suggest that there is a list, a little bit of wishful thinking, because information like that is not going to be made available to the rank and file agents in the FBI. That is an operation that's conducted by a black ops group or by the deep state or by the Illuminati within the FBI. They certainly aren't going to keep those files available for the future director of a Republican administration, a Trump administration, to have access to. But Fartsmell himself knows a little bit about honey traps because I think we all know that he himself fell victim to one from Fang Fang, the Chinese spy, who seduced him because, well, I mean, they knew that that was the only way that he had any hopes of getting laid. If you enjoy watching my reports and you want to get a great shirt and support my work, then head on over to my online store, markdice.com, and order my new Alligator Alcatraz shirt, which is also available in a tank top as well, and 2 different designs. Sometimes people don't want to be wearing these big, bold designs, so I'm going to start releasing some of them in a more subtle version as well. So head on over to markdice.com, click the link in the description below, and check them out.